Okay, welcome back. A little bit of a theme going today, talking about education, and I am so honored to have with us today Adam Kissel. He is a visiting fellow for higher education reform in the Center for Education Policy at the Heritage Foundation. He's also a board member on several universities and serves as the America 250 Advisory Council on Civics, History, and American Future, a graduate from the University of Chicago and Harvard. He served in the first term of the Trump administration as the Deputy Secretary for Higher Education Programs. And we have a lot to talk about today. So, Adam, good to see you again. How are you, friend?
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. This is fascinating. I guess, you know, there's a 30,000-foot question. What's happening to higher ed?
Well, unfortunately, there's been a long trend away from a good quality classical education at most institutions. There's been more and more of a country club atmosphere as easy money has provided a lot more money for DEI programs and administrators to make college fun instead of the serious academic experience it should be. And it's affected the culture of institutions where many students today feel like they can't say what they really believe because they may be punished for it, whether in class, by their peers, or in other ways. So this oppressive culture from a leftist point of view has really hurt our American universities.
Is it recoverable?
It is. One key way that I think it is that more and more of the classical education model in K through 12 is producing eventually a generation of students who will want a higher quality education. And the school choice movement around the United States has reached so many states now that we're going to have lots of great classical schools producing a lot of great graduates who are going to say to their colleges, I want to have a great experience in college academically, where I can say what I think, have those hard conversations. And that pressure, I think, will affect a lot of institutions to do what their consumers or clients are starting to want. It's going to take a generation before we have that much pressure, but I think it will happen.
Are these higher eds, these Ivy League schools, are they learning anything from the past conflicts?
The conflicts in some ways started in the 1950s when William F. Buckley wrote about Yale, this book called God and Man at Yale, where he argued that neither God nor traditional notions of man are appreciated or taught at Yale University, despite Yale having existed since 1701 with a religious mission. It had lost that mission. So we have now 70 years since that time, and we have what I could now call the legacy elite institutions resting on their laurels, on their past history of having been great institutions. Fast forward to a couple of years ago when we had the big anti-Semitic rallies and encampments, and universities seem to have stayed in that downward trend where they have not responded to the critics. They've gotten worse. And unfortunately, it's taken the acts of the federal government and sometimes state governments to say, you need to be accountable to the people for being an American university that promotes at least the basics of American values of civil discourse and freedom of expression, academic freedom for your faculty and students, without putting your thumb on the scale and deciding one view is right and one view is wrong. Now, religious institutions are different, but I don't see that we've seen very much learning by these institutions. The discipline that they're facing now from governments is being imposed from the outside. These are not cultural changes that are happening from the inside. So they have a long, long way to go.
So, Adam, how did these colleges, elite colleges, Ivy League colleges, go from critical thinking to hotbeds of activism?
My publisher for the book Slacking that came out just recently is Encounter Books, founded by Roger Kimball. Roger Kimball has a great book called Tenured Radicals, and it's gone through a number of editions because it's been received so well. His argument is that the radicals of the 1960s and early 70s became the tenured faculty members of today. So the leftist activism that was encouraged and coddled by universities, again, many decades ago, has led to a culture on campus where faculty members think that their job is to be activists, and they want to be activists rather than serious scholars in case after case after case. So we've seen this trend where professors become assistant professors and then senior professors. And what do other than reproduce themselves in the next generation of professors? So the tenured radicals of, say, the 80s and 90s produced a whole new set of tenured radicals of the 2010s and 2020s. And unlike the conservatives, who, when they were the majority on college campuses long ago, when the left said, please let us into the canon, the right said, sure, let's have all voices. The left has done the opposite, and they've closed ranks, and they haven't let conservatives in. They think conservatives are too dumb to take their place in elite higher education or just don't fit in. And they play games to make sure that conservative graduate students and college faculty don't get in and don't get tenure and don't get to stay. So the left has been intolerant and increasingly intolerant.
So it's so interesting here, Adam. You're talking about something I think we're now all aware of, and we're trying to scratch your head how this happened. Can we go to the next layer? And that would be the Board of Regents. Why did they allow this happen? And will they ever regain their backbone to restore the credibility of the institution?
Love the question. Thanks for it. Trustees or regents are responsible. They have the fiduciary duty to the institution to make it as good as it can be, keep it safe against risks. And in the case of public institutions, they have a duty to the taxpayers and the people of the state that is subsidizing and sponsoring that university. Now, unfortunately, trustees are often appointed because they're friends with the governor or they're alums with a lot of money. They've been successful in business. They're alums of the institution. And they would rather just trust the president and the provost and the faculty to do what they do. And the trustee meeting is a dog and pony show where they get presentations, they get a script. One of the places where I'm a trustee, I get a script of exactly the words I'm supposed to say so that I look like I know what I'm talking about. Now I do, but most trustees I think don't, so they're glad to have the script. So they have not traditionally thought of themselves as a watchdog for the institution. And for many years, it was fine because universities could be trusted and they were doing their job. It's only in the last few decades that universities have failed so much that trustees are starting to remember that they do have fiduciary responsibilities and that they have to do something to mitigate risks and to make the institutions as good as they can be, not just be cheerleaders, go to the football games, shake hands, but take an active role in university reform until the university staff and faculty deserve that deference and trust again, which they have squandered and lost. So for instance, where I'm a trustee, University of West Florida, we have a great set of trustees who are taking our responsibilities seriously, and we're doing our job correctly. We're seeing that, say, at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, the trustees are doing a great job. But unfortunately, by and large, a lot of the trustees have not gotten in yet on this new mission. If you take a place like Harvard, the trustees are digging in against reform, and things are not getting better yet at Harvard.
Okay. Let me unpack a little more here. Recently, with all the controversy, Columbia, Harvard, others, a lot of the federal dollars are being withheld. How impacting is this?
It's a huge risk, financial risk, as well as the reputational risk to particularly the Ivy League institutions. So Cornell, for instance, has $1 billion on hold from the federal government because of its alleged, and I think true, pattern of anti-Semitism. And more recently, the America First Policy Institute has said in a long report and complaint to the government that there has been discrimination on the basis of race, sex, and ethnicity in faculty hiring and in scholarships, and even a bounty of $50,000 in the medical school if you could bring in the people of the right races or ethnicities. So if Cornell loses $1 billion and then continues to lose federal funding, it's in big trouble. In the case of Harvard, that could be $1 or $2 billion at a time. Now, Harvard has $53 billion in endowment, but not having $1 billion to $2 billion a year to spend on what it thought it would have money to spend on is a major hit to Harvard. Harvard has needed to go out asking donors for new money, trying to rearrange its debts. So it's almost uncanny that you would have a board of trustees, or what you call them at Harvard, the Harvard Corporation or the overseers, saying, we're going to stand firm in our discrimination, in our anti-Semitism, and not reform because we want to be the way we are, even at the risk of billions of dollars. Columbia has already capitulated. Penn has already capitulated on Title IX. And they understand that if they want to keep getting hundreds of millions of dollars or into the billions, they have to at least not discriminate on the basis of sex or race.
Is there any consequence to a college, university that disregards the edict to do away with DEI?
What the federal government has done is say that illegal DEI, when the DEI rises to the level to call it diversity, equity, and inclusion, when that set of principles rises to the level of actual discrimination, you're violating the Civil Rights Act. You may be violating the Equal Protection Clause. You may be violating Title IX, which has to do with discrimination on the basis of sex. If you are violating that executive order, it's because you're also violating those other civil rights laws and principles, and you are liable for those violations. And again, you can lose all of your federal funding. Your students can lose access to federal student aid programs. What states have also done in a number of cases, again, North Carolina, Florida are some of the best examples. Also Ohio, maybe Tennessee, Oklahoma by executive order of the governor, I think Utah. Many states have said, Arkansas is in on the game now too, that institutions in their state also cannot have illegal DEI as a matter of state law, because they have state civil rights laws as well. So if you are discriminating on a college campus and you're the administration, you need to have your general counsel have a hard talk with you and tell you you're in big trouble with the state, you're in big trouble with the federal government, cut it out. And you're also in big trouble ethically and morally because you're doing what's wrong by discriminating against your own students and faculty. So good, mostly red states have said, shape up or you're in trouble. The federal government, which has the more power than anybody in the country, has said, shape up or you're in big trouble. And when DEI becomes discrimination, that's the threshold to look for. Having geographic diversity is not a problem. Having diversity of ideas is not a problem, diversity of backgrounds. But when you start treating people differently because of their race, sex, ethnicity, that's when you get the DEI problems that have to be addressed.
What happened to critical thinking?
Well, I think it was Peter Lawler, the political scientist, who said, why do I need to call it critical thinking? Why don't I just call it thinking? Right? So thinking well and deeply is critical thinking if you're thinking well. So what has happened, I think, the idea of critical thinking has been taken over philosophically by this idea of critical theory, where it means that you're being critical of existing thought patterns in the name of an ideology. So it's almost the opposite of critical thinking. If what you mean by critical thinking is critical theory, where there's this lens of oppressor groups and oppressed groups, and the result is that everything fits into your boxes through that lens.
Yeah.
So critical thinking is supposed to be, you look carefully at a text, you look at who wrote it if you need to, you look at what it's actually saying, you think about how it fits into the great conversation of ideas throughout Western civilization or the civilization it comes from, and you say, what's really going on here? And then, once you know that, then you say, do I agree with it or not? You don't come in with your pre-established views, at least at a normal university that treats all ideas at least as something you start with to think about. You say, I need to think about this idea. I need to think about this text. What is it saying? And then I decide what to do about it. That's high quality critical thinking. Unfortunately, as we show in our book, Slacking, a lot of the core courses, these general education courses in the Ivy League, especially in the humanities and social sciences, do the opposite. They take a conclusion as the premise. They say, given that X is good or bad, given that America is an oppressor society, what should we do about it? Well, that's the opposite of critical thinking. Courses are narrow, biased, tendentious. And then you have a whole class of courses where you're not expected to think at all. You're just indulging your values and views the way you already have them. So you might take a course where you're learning all about shoes at Princeton or intersectional disability studies at Cornell. I could name lots of courses maybe in the next segment where instead of getting a critical thinking education, you're getting the opposite.
All right, let me take a quick break. Check out Adam's book. It's called Slacking, A Guide to Ivy League Miseducation. There's a picture of the cover of the book on the screen there. Can they get that online?
Yes. So Encounter Books is a great place to go and get a copy of the book. If you want to get it on Kindle or buy it through Amazon, you can do that. And of course, anywhere else good books are sold. But Encounter Books is the publisher. And you can see what else they offer at Encounter. You might want to find some other books too.
Okay. Slacking, A Guide to Ivy League Miseducation. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. What an honor to have with us today Adam Kissel. He is a visiting fellow there for higher education reform at the Center for Education Policy at the Heritage Foundation. By the way, that's also the website to get a hold of him, heritage.org. I can't say enough about this organization. They're terrific, especially with the online courses and services, heritage.org. He's the author of a book that pretty much brings into focus everything we're talking about, called Slacking, A Guide to Ivy League Miseducation. So many things to talk to you about, Adam, and so little time. Let me just ask you a question. I hope it comes out right. Does anybody care what a bratty college student thinks of anything from a university that's lost its way?
Well, considering that they're paying $80,000 a year, if they're paying full price, the universities care what they think because they want to keep them happy. They want to have them come back for sophomore year and junior year, be paying that $80,000 a year. Those are the people who care the most about what college students think, bratty or not. The ones who are getting the big tuition payouts due to the easy money from federal student loans. And universities keep raising tuition because they know that the students can get enough loans to pay it. So, however, if you are an employer of a recent graduate of the Ivy League, I would say don't just look at the name on the diploma. It might be a negative. Now, if they studied STEM, math, engineering, give them a good look. And then because of grade inflation, don't look at their GPA. Everybody's getting A minuses or A's. So go into the transcript if they're a finalist for your job and say, were they going to be a slacker? Did they choose the slacker courses, like Introduction to the Occult Sciences at Yale?
Okay.
Or did they take a serious course on the classics of social and political thought? Were they a striver? So were they a striver or a slacker? And that's how you know whether you should care about that person and hire them.
That is a great point. Okay. I want to come back to something you mentioned earlier, and that's what has happened to literally teaching civil discourse. I mean, from a respectable point of view.
Unfortunately, again, a lot of faculty members think that their job is to be an activist, that it's good to undermine traditional values, Western civilization values, America's traditional values, and that one of the ways to do that is through a kind of repression and an intolerance of ideas and views that represent those things that they're trying to undermine. So in the classroom or in the culture of the place, instead of teaching tolerance and civil discourse, a lot of faculty members, again, in the humanities and social sciences, most of all, are teaching intolerance. And they're saying, if you want to be an activist like me, then you need to make sure that those other bad people and bad views aren't getting equal treatment. We're excluding them. What some universities have been doing on the positive side, say Purdue University under Mitch Daniels, when he was the president, said, you know what, we actually want to inculcate and introduce students into a different model, one where there is civil discourse. So there will be a module or a whole educational experience for incoming students in student orientation where we say, if you come here, civil discourse is what we do. That's the point of being at a great university, is debating hard ideas. So there's a big difference between the activist faculty and what I would call the activist universities, and the more serious ones like Purdue or say University of Chicago still would say the aims of education are to be a serious scholar and to be a better human being and citizen. That's why you're here. And the way you do that is through serious scholarship and thinking about hard questions. Big difference between that one kind of university and the other. So, and it comes back to critical thinking versus indoctrination.
Would doing away with tenureship be helpful?
I think so. I think that post-tenure review is another way to handle that problem. So if faculty members are dead wood and they're not producing anymore like what they did when they were younger, then they can go through post-tenure review. But if faculty members are persistent activists, the First Amendment will protect them and academic freedom will protect them up to a point. But when they are doing things that they're not actually supposed to be doing in the classroom, if the class is, say, an anthropology class, but instead they're telling you about all the different ways that America is an oppressive society, and they're telling you about their dog and saying you don't have to go to class today, you can protest instead. Well, tenure is not going to protect you, but having tenure makes it harder for the university to take action against you when it needs to.
Yeah.
So leaving tenure behind is a good idea. Something like a 5-year rolling contract is much better, because if it turns out you're not producing, now you have a few years left to up your game.
All right, let's see if I can squeeze in a couple more questions. This is a big question, but maybe you can give us a simple answer. What happens to just basic morality at these schools?
Every university is unique. There are Christian schools with a deep Christian mission, like Southern Wesleyan University, where I'm a trustee. Ethics and morality are ingrained throughout the institution. Love that place. But a lot of institutions don't think that they're supposed to be teaching traditional morality, and instead they think they're supposed to be teaching you the new morality of the left.
Okay.
So I'm sorry that that's the situation.
No, I hear you. All right. So, and then is part of the problem, as we pull back the onion layer, skin layers here, that the curriculums have been corrupted as well. Is that an issue?
Our whole book is about the corrupted curriculum in the Ivy League. Not the entire curriculum, but the most important part of it, which is your core curriculum, the general education courses. If you read Slacking, you'll laugh and you'll cry at the same time about how terrible some of the courses are. We don't have time to get into them, but you could have a course on pop culture, on pop sapphism, Beyonce, Bad Bunny, if you've even heard of him, Introduction to the Occult Sciences, as I've said, and those count for your core requirements. Those are key examples in this area.
So, if the funding from the feds continue to get cut off, reality sets in pretty fast, even though they have these great endowments out there. But the cash flow being what it is, more and more parents are not willing to send their kids to an Ivy League school anymore. It seems like to me that they're heading into a season of great adjustment.
Yes, the time is coming for them to adjust. First step is to admit you have a problem. I think Harvard Faculty of Arts and Sciences doesn't yet do that. But as demographic changes and dollar changes happen, they're going to be in a lot more trouble and increasing trouble. I think the scientists and medical researchers are finally going to say to those humanities professors, stop it, cut it out, because we need to have a university and solve some medical problems here.
So the alternative are other schools. I've had quite a few people on from various institutions, and it seems to me, especially the faith-based colleges are just booming. Are you seeing that trend?
Yes, very much so. So the institutions that have a clear and distinctive mission and wear it on their sleeve, wear those colors, those attract students because students are hungry for an institution with a distinctive mission that will help them become a better human being and citizen. If you tell a student you're going to have a great result, then that student is going to go to that college.
Adam, thank you. You're fascinating. I'd like to stay connected with you. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out his book called Slacking, A Guide to Ivy League Miseducation. There's a picture of the cover of the book on the screen. That can be downloaded, and you can get it online. And, of course, heritage.org is the other website that he represents. I can't say enough about the Heritage group as well, heritage.org. Thank you, sir. Can we get you back?
Yes, would love to come back anytime.
All right. Thanks for your time. Have a great day. God bless you.